is going on in terms of corporate responsibility data and data collection. It's giving you some thoughts on what we think. So today we're going to talk about CSR software and how that is a tool for engaging with your supply chain. We'll be finished, thankfully, within less than 30 minutes. I'll probably talk for about 15 to 20, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. And as Matt said, if you do have any questions, please use the chat window, and we'll get to them at the end. So, without further ado, yes, the first thing to start with is who is Sustainit? For those of you who don't know, Sustainit are a sustainability data consultancy. We started back in 2006, so it's been nearly 10 years now. We've been involved in CSR, EHS, and sustainability data for all that time, and we've helped our corporate clients go from wanting to define what kind of CSR data and sustainability reporting they want to do, right the way through to being genuine industry leaders. And we've done this through a dedication to data more than anything else. Over the years, we've seen a lot of the problems that come with handling the big data. We've learned alongside our clients and continue to learn how best data helps move the sustainability agenda forward. So, supply chain engagement. I think it's important to recognize the size of the challenge when we start to look at the supply chain, and specifically at supply chain data collection. With the global networks that so many companies have in place now, companies don't have hundreds, but have thousands of suppliers. And when we start to look at how you might collect sustainability data from those guys, then you have to recognize, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, that there's no instant fix available. Any move to start collecting data from the supply chain is going to require significant work to build the engagement, to agree reporting boundaries for suppliers, and I think this is the most important thing, and I'll come back to this I think a couple of times doing this, to make the data collection process as easy as possible. So if it's so complicated, why are so many companies looking at CSR data for their supply chain? The fact is that much of corporate responsibility is about reputation. And while modern industry has decentralized and large and diverse supply chains now provide assembled components rather than just raw materials, the responsibility for those stages of the process still remain, I think, at least in public perception, with the final company. A great example for me is one of our clients is Under Armour, and they actually make very little, and actually own very few of the manufacturing facilities that make their final garments. It's all a divested supply chain. And that's really the model that we see time and time again. Modern manufacturing is now global. If we look at where any complex product was made, then you'd find that even a single product can have social and environmental impact that spreads across continents, not just across countries. These kind of supply chains and the purchasing practices, that's a good one for this time in the morning, that have created this environment where thousands of suppliers around the world contribute to the products we buy. But for the general public, it's the company who put the label on the final product that has to shoulder responsibility. And that's why so many companies are now looking long and hard at CSR in their supply chain. We now know, and the reputational risk that the companies are subjecting themselves to when they use these suppliers, because they can't just hold their hands and go, well, it's a supplier. It doesn't really work anymore. I think for that reason, more than for any other reason, that's why supply chain data is really, really important. So it's a brand new set of challenges. As I start to talk to colleagues and certainly talk to clients about CSR in the supply chain, then a lot of what we talk about actually has a pretty familiar ring to it. As you start to look at how to collect CSR data from suppliers, then a lot of the big questions are about creating a clear hierarchy that can be used to manage and effectively collect data. It's about creating a cohesive data collection structure that meets not just your requirements, the requirements of all your suppliers as well. And how to get data from people who don't actually see the value of providing you with that data. These are all the same challenges that a lot of companies go through when they first start to collect CSR data for the first time. And in a lot of cases, the answers to these challenges are also remarkably similar. To give you an example of what I mean, I was talking recently to someone in the corporate world about this very thing, about first starting supply chain reporting, and they just couldn't see how to do it. They had thousands of suppliers, they were across the globe, they all had their own contracts and their own performance and quality requirements. He couldn't see a straight route to getting the data he wanted out of these suppliers, because he was thinking about it as a case of, well, I have to ask them for this. He was thinking of it as asking one question to everybody. But if he could align what he was doing with his CSR supply chain reporting with actually what his suppliers could give him, then that challenge becomes much more achievable. If from there you can also make data collection easier and more relevant, then all of a sudden it's much more of an achievable goal. I know it might seem obvious, but I think one of the most important milestones in getting good CSR data out of the supply chain is going to be right at the start. And it's going to be creating the idea that CSR in the supply chain is a collaborative, mutually beneficial experience. If your suppliers understand that this is an ongoing move towards greater transparency, if they understand that CSR is a long-term commitment from you to them, and if they understand that they're a key part of the process, then I think you can create an environment where suppliers want to work with you. And that's the important thing. It's about making sure that they understand what you're trying to achieve. Obviously, another important step is going to be defining the framework and the data requirements. And more than any other section, this is where corporate responsibility managers have got to understand that it needs a collaborative approach, much more than internal CSR data collection. The best way to get your suppliers to give you accurate CSR data isn't going to be to complicate it. It's going to be to simplify the process. Use the data they're already collecting, help them use that data as part of their CSR strategy as well as part of yours, and just make sure they see how what they're giving you is part of a long-term process across the company. Lastly, and this is kind of the third point, I want to very briefly touch on the technology aspect, and I'm going to go into this in a bit. But CSR systems are designed to collect CSR data. No matter how it comes in, no matter what kind of units of measure or the periodicity, that's what these softwares are in place to do. So if you've already got a CSR system in place, make sure you look at how you include supply chain into that data process as much as possible. It's going to make your life so much simpler. I wanted to talk quickly about Westpac Banking Group. I think they're quite a good example of some of what I've already mentioned. They set out a CSR leadership pledge back in 2001. One of the key components was that they were committed to their supply chain, and they were going to identify suppliers that shared their CSR vision, work with them, and through that process they'd also find the ones who didn't really come up to scratch, and they'd stop working with them. And that was their initial idea. What actually ended up happening was much more interesting, and it touches on some of what we're talking about today. As they started to engage with their suppliers, it became really apparent to Westpac that a lot of the suppliers weren't able to meet their standards. And it wasn't that they didn't want to, it was that they'd never had the opportunity to do so. So Westpac looked at it and thought, well, look, rather than pushing aside this goodwill that we've got and these guys who want to work with us and want to evolve, let's actually take the long view and let's create a collaborative process and let's work together. So they decided to work cooperatively with their suppliers, and they decided to bring their supply network up to their standards through collaboration rather than having these standards and expect suppliers to start at that point. As those relationships then developed, Westpac were able to collect not just data on the existing impact, but they were also able to get involved with their suppliers' CSR planning. So they could then use this for much more work. They could get involved in leading indicators rather than just lagging indicators. It gave them, excuse me, and it obviously furthered the case for even more involvement with their supply chain. I think this very much mirrors my experience is part of why I wanted to talk about it, with building long-term data collection relationships. It's once the suppliers understand they're part of a long-term two-way relationship, you start to have an easier time getting access to data and you get a more positive relationship. And as Westpac found, you can even start to receive proactive feedback from suppliers who really buy into what you're trying to achieve. I think that gets really interesting. So if collaboration and long-term relationships are the real cornerstones to getting good CSR data, why are we talking about systems? Well, I want to repeat what I said 2 slides ago. CSR systems are designed to manage CSR data. And the challenges that you face as you start to gather information are the challenges that software is designed to address. But here's an important point that you need to remember. An effective CSR implementation doesn't just make data collection easier for administrators. It makes it easier for those responsible for providing the data. As I've already talked about, providing suppliers with an easy and standard way for them to give you their information is going to be invaluable when it comes to bringing suppliers on board. If you're asking them to do is reasonable and simple, you stand a much better chance of getting the data you want. And a second point here, and this is right on the screen, is one that I can't stress enough. If you can stay away from Excel, then stay away from Excel. There are so many ways that Excel can cause you problems, from lack of standardized responses to the bloating of macro-laden spreadsheets, and to the fact that you can't guarantee any kind of audit trail. One of my favorite examples of this is on standardized responses. One of our clients was sending out an annual Excel spreadsheet, very, very simple, just collecting environmental data, so nothing complicated. And we started to look at it and started to understand what they were getting. For one KPI, they'd been sent back sheets, and I think they had about 15 different units of measure for one KPI. Not because they presented these guys with the options, but that's just what people had provided them with. As you start to drill into that even more, what we found is that it wasn't actually different units of measure. It was CO2 tons, tons of CO2, CO2T. Everything was just expressed slightly differently, and it just made it more complicated. It's a really, I mean, as a problem, not a massive one and reasonably easy to fix, but imagine that when you've got thousands of suppliers, or imagine that when you've got hundreds of data points. It just grows the problem exponentially. The simpler your data collection process is, the easier it's going to be, and on the whole, I think Excel gives you too many opportunities to create problems. The last point is one that I think a lot of CSR software has spent a lot of time over the last couple of years really addressing, which is data availability. Historically, the focus on CSR systems and on CSR data has always been the top level. It's been about the annual report, the big numbers that go to the board, and that's completely logical. That's where the key stakeholders are. That's where the budget comes from. But as engagement across the user network has become more important, so systems have increased their capabilities in this regard. I think that's a great opportunity for you to provide real, and I think for most cases, unexpected value to your suppliers. If your system gives them instant feedback on the data they're providing you, be that a scorecard, be that a report that they can use, then all of a sudden they're seeing a value to their data that they hadn't expected. They're able to get you something back. Again, it's about simplification and about a collaborative relationship. So if we've already made the case for using CSR software, then what are the key areas that you can focus on that will really help build engagement? I think there are 3 areas we should talk about. And I think, unsurprisingly, as it is throughout this presentation, it's about simplification. The most obvious focus has to be building a coherent network that makes sense of your supply chain. Obviously, there's a temptation to manage the supply chain as one data set with numbers from across the globe just aggregated into a few KPIs. But this precludes any of the data availability and transparency opportunities. If you start with key suppliers, if you start with a framework that they've agreed with, then it gives you the opportunity to build that flexibility in right from the start. And it's always harder to implement data flexibility retrospectively. If you do it from the start, it's much easier. It's more work up front, but it gives you much more flexibility as you move forward. profiles, or that's what user management and controller would be another way of putting it, is another great way to manage what data your users is exposed to. So building profiles with suppliers in mind means that not only are you making sure that suppliers only see the data that applies to them, which is obviously massively important, but also means you can ensure they're only being asked questions that they're able to answer. Again, it's about making the experience of providing data as streamlined as possible for these guys. And then lastly, we come back to reports that are usable for suppliers. Don't consider data to be a one-directional process. It's by providing usable data back to suppliers that you can really transform your system from being about data entry to being about data engagement. And that's going to ensure that you're able to build a network of suppliers who are committed to providing you with usable and accurate supply chain data. So this is the slide that I have to put in, or I get stuff thrown at the back of my head. How does Sustainit help? So we've got almost a decade's experience working with clients across various sustainability software platforms. We have an exceptional track record of helping our clients understand and design the right sustainability data capture tool for their requirements. And we know how to help them include that into overall reporting at sustainability impact. And as you start to look at collecting and managing data from the supply chain, then it's going to be about streamlined, efficient, and user-friendly data collection. And that's something that we have a great track record of helping with. And obviously, if you'd like to talk more about that, we would be happy to do so. So to bring it back to what I consider the 3 key tips are, develop a framework based on suppliers' needs, not yours. Make sure the framework is aligned with your suppliers' needs. More than anything else, getting effective supply chain data is about making sure that the data you're asking for is available and it's something that they can give you and they know it's accurate. If you align with your key suppliers on CSR data, you ensure that you get information that you can be confident is accurate and then therefore usable. Use the strengths of the CSR system. Take the time at the start to set up the functionality that will allow you to collect data in the system. If you can avoid it, don't take random spreadsheets from your suppliers and then manually import the data yourself. Get your suppliers involved with entering the data correctly. It gives you much more accurate data and it provides you with a usable audit trail right from day one. And build data transparency into your system at the start. If right from launch your suppliers are getting access to usable reporting functionality, then as they enter data the system, you stand a much better chance of getting accurate data, again, from day one. CSR systems provide you with the capability for suppliers to report on their data only, which is great, and it gives them something back straight away. And it's a great way of getting usable data from them. It's just about simplifying and making it usable. So, thank you very much. I have mostly finished talking for now. I guess now what we have to see is, are there any questions? Please use the chat function, and let's see what we've got. We've got probably about 10 minutes left. So. Matt, any questions?
Thanks very much, Joe. I thought that was really interesting, particularly like the comparison between internal CSR data collection and supply chain data collection. How there's many similar challenges faced when you're going outside your organisation as compared to when you're going to different business functions within your organisation. People don't necessarily see the relevance of why they have to provide you with this, and if you can make it relevant to them and give them something from it as well, it makes it much more likely they'll agree with your requests. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. So we've got one here. Will I need a new module for my software system to manage this data? So does the CSR software that that person has in place, presumably, does it need a new module, or can the system do it as is?
So the short answer is maybe. The longer answer is there's an awful lot of parameters. It depends on the software, it depends on what you're trying to collect, and it depends on how broad you're going to cast it. I'm always tend to say the short answer is probably not, but possibly yes. I think a lot of the software these days will allow you to collect some pretty robust data and will allow you to ring-fence it in a way that you don't need a dedicated module. But as we start to look at thousands of suppliers and you start to look at managing how that data is collected, then sometimes yes. But my default answer would be, let's have a look at what you need to collect first before we say you need a new module. Obviously, a lot of the systems out there, enabled on 360, have got now dedicated supply chain modules that are designed to handle data in a slightly different way for suppliers. I think that a lot of what they're trying to do, you can probably do within the core system. It's just that it handles probably a little bit more gracefully and needs less initial design work. I hope that helps.
We've got a couple of questions, more questions. First one from Joe. Is it possible to get a copy of the slide deck? Joe and everybody, I'll be following up with you all, and you'll all get an email which will have a slide deck PDF attached to it. There should also be a recording of this whole webinar put up on our YouTube channel, which sounds fascinating and like a thrilling watch. There's some all of our historic webinars are on there, so lots of other things that we've spoken about previously, so I'll send you a link to that as well. Question from Suzanne: taking into your account about keeping it simple, how does alignment or integration with other systems such as SEDEX fit in your experience? If you can talk about that, Jay. So how does alignment with systems like SEDEX fit?
Well, I mean, SEDEX is an interesting example because obviously they've got their own data collection system that they use for suppliers who sign up. The great thing about that framework is you can use certainly, how do I put it? I'm trying to think of the best way of putting it. So SEDEX's data collection is based on actually on an enable system. I don't know if you knew that. And it obviously asks specific questions and results in giving you a score at the end. If you can align what you're asking with SEDEX, then I think you get a great opportunity to be able to ask the same questions and realize that you're not asking for anything too complicated. If I know that for one of the clients we worked with, when they started to look at supply chain, they use EcoVadis quite extensively, which is another one of these frameworks. And so they're therefore in the process of building a supply chain framework that takes into account EcoVadis, the idea being that the suppliers already have to fill in that anyway. If they're asking exactly the same questions, they only have to ask them once. They only have to answer them once as well. And so, yeah, I think it's about understanding where these external frameworks actually sit within your requirements for your supply chain. If the suppliers are already answering CDP data, it's probably another good example. If you can tap into that and say, well, look, we'll just ask you exactly the same questions, but the reporting that we give you back will feed straight into your CDP submission as well. Again, it's a nice way of making it flow in both directions. Does that make sense as an answer? It's very early in the morning, I realize, for everybody, so I apologize if it's a little bit of a rambling answer. But again, it is about simplicity, and it's about understanding what frameworks you're going to work with and making sure that those are tied into the questions you ask. Any more questions? I think we've probably got time for one more.
So final question here is, what, in your experience and opinion, is the most important part of this process? So if you had to pick one thing to bear in mind throughout any supply chain engagement work that you're doing, what would be the main thing you want to take away and keep with you?
Oh, good. Okay. I think, quite ironically for me and for what we're talking about, I think one of the most important things actually isn't about data or systems. It's about setting out the long-term relationship at the start. I was talking to someone at, I think it was at the SEDEX supply chain conference last year about this very thing, and they said that they were having real problems with some of the suppliers because they didn't understand why CSR data was being asked for, and their initial assumption was that it was part of a negotiation exercise, and that if they looked at things like turnover and environmental cost per product and all these things, it would be used as a tool for requesting lower prices. So I think the most important thing is that initial transparency and honesty. Supply chain, you have no real way of getting access to this data unless they cooperate with you, unless they see it as a collaborative part of a long-term commitment. So if, like Westpac, you were able to say, look, this is important data to us, but the reason we're asking for it is that we are making a long-term commitment to you, to work with you, to be a more responsible company and to have a more responsible supply chain. It's that long-term commitment, that transparency at the start of the ambition, I think, is going to be the thing that gets you the best results. The system is going to be important, and I'll get killed if I don't say that, but it's true. Absolutely, the software is going to be important. Asking the right questions is going to be important. Making data collection easy is going to be important. But the most vital thing is going to be making sure that your supply chain understands the journey you're heading on and understands the value of what you're trying to do and understands the long-term commitment that you have to them by starting this journey. Yeah, that's the most important part for me.
Right, thank you very much, Joe. Everybody, thank you for your time. I hope you found this presentation potentially enjoyable but certainly useful. As mentioned before, I will send you an email with details of how you can view again, or if there's any colleagues you might want to send it to, please feel free. If you want to contact us, then you will all have my contact details, so if there's anything else you'd like to talk about specifically with either myself or Joe, then please give us a call. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to some or most of you in the not too distant future. Again, thanks for your participation and have a nice morning.
Thank you very much, everyone.